kick things off, shall we, with the place to start, and it's Erol Bulut. He's been sacked by Cardiff following their 2-0 home defeat to Leeds. Before we get on to that, there were tributes to Sol Bamba at this game, of course, two of his former sides meeting here. It was Cardiff's first home match since his passing 3 weeks ago. His family were there, there was a minute's applause, the two sets of fans were singing one Sol Bamba, so an emotional afternoon and just a fitting tribute to a great man. So that was good to see. But let's get back to the football, Justin. And this was a game where Erol Bulut badly needed a result. He wasn't helped by Joel Bagan being sent off after 23 minutes, was he? It was a bit of a strange red card, wasn't it, Justin? But I think it was the right decision, wasn't it?
Was it? I think it was quite harsh. I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game, by the way. I think Leeds would have still won it. Just to clear that one up. But I do think that obviously the game was made harder for them. I don't think it was a red. It feels harsh. I just don't think you can justify. Well, I was going to say, I just don't think you can justify playing an advantage as the ref did and then give a red and then pull it back and then give a red for a professional foul. If it was a really bad tackle, you sort of understand it. But I don't think it was a clear goal scoring opportunity. This is one of those decisions that is going to, you agree that it's a red or you disagree that it's a red. I don't think there's a middle ground here. I can't see why the ref's given a red there.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it was strange because Gnonto gets back up to try and carry on with the attack, whereas if he stays down, then Bagan has just taken out an attacker when he's the last man on throw and goal. So that's why I think it was the right call for me. It just looks weird because, as you say, the referee tried to give Gnonto the chance to carry on the attack, but obviously he didn't. So I think it was the right decision, but as you say, does it really matter? Because I think everyone will probably in agreement that Leeds would have gone on to win, whatever the case. And then from that point on, after the red card, the game went exactly how you expected it to. I mean, Cardiff struggled to attack with 11 men, never mind 10. And then the only disappointment for Leeds was that it took quite a long time for them to score a second goal. And also that they didn't score more, I suppose, because they had so many chances, including a very poorly taken penalty by Pascal Struijk. But overall, a pretty chilled afternoon for Leeds, and it's one that's cost Erol Bulut his job, Justin.
I think Bulut would have gone either way. I think maybe a draw or a win might have given him an extra couple of days before the board probably realised that Bulut isn't the man to take the club forward. But it was an unavoidable situation at Cardiff. The club had gone really sour. I've seen a lot of Cardiff fans on social media questioning everything. And when you get to that point amongst supporters, supporters have lost faith, both the board, naturally, and the manager. It feels like the manager's also lost the dressing room. You've only got to look at the stats of their games this season to see that. And of course, it's a peak time for Cardiff to sack their managers, which I'll ask you a question now, actually. 5 managers before Erol Bulut have been sacked in the autumn period. Can you remember who they are?
Steve Morrison.
That's 1.
Neil Warnock.
That's 2.
Neil Harris.
Incorrect. He was a January sacking, I believe.
Mick McCarthy.
That's 3.
Was
these 2 are sticky.
Yeah, I was going to say, was Mark Hudson in autumn? I'm not actually sure.
I don't think he was. I think that was a winter sacking.
No,
do you want the last 2?
Yeah, go on then.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah, of course.
and Paul Trollope.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's sacking season for Cardiff City, isn't it? And unfortunately for Erol Bulut, that's been no different for him. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise, really, that he lasted to this game because they've been so poor so far. But unfortunately, this had to happen. They have shown absolutely nothing, have they? There hasn't even been a crumb of encouragement. Usually, at the very minimum, you can say, well, at least player X is playing well or we're looking somewhat sturdy at the back. But you can't say that about Cardiff City. One of the most bizarre things I've seen this season, and there's been quite a few things so far this season, is Erol Bulut seemingly implying Cardiff have had enough chances to win more games than they have so far, which is simply utter bollocks, Justin. Is he watching the same team as us?
What if he's, it's an opposite day for Erol Bulut, and the opposition, is what he's judging his opinion on here, because they have not been in games. They have not been in games. They've had chances. Every team has chances, but I know this is a bad example, but this game, Cardiff didn't do anything. I know Bacon got sent off, but there was no game plan to try and hurt Leeds at any point. There was no directness. And I think this change in style of play has got the players confused, and clearly got Erol Bulut confused, because them playing possession football, has taken everything that's been useful out of this Cardiff team completely away from them. It's been such a bad decision for Erol Bulut to go in this direction. And they're paying for it now. And like you said, I have no idea what Erol Bulut has been watching, because Cardiff have not been in games.
They certainly haven't. They've got the lowest XG in the league and have failed to create more than 0.7 XG in each of their last 5 games. So it's a baffling thing for him to say, and it's not a good look, because he's quite clearly seen something completely different to what everyone else has been seeing, and that's a big problem when your manager is coming across as deluded. So he had to go. And yeah, but this has been coming with Cardiff, as I was alluding to a second ago. It was more of a surprise, really, that he lasted for this game, let alone going afterwards. So, yeah, it had to happen, Justin. And I suppose the question is now, where do Cardiff go next? Because it's got to be said, Cardiff over the years haven't been prolific when it comes to good managerial appointments. And considering how they've started the season, they need someone who's going to really pull them up from the dirt at the moment.
Oof, yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't have a lot of faith in the board, and we've spoken about this at length over the last couple of weeks. Is the board is the problem. The board has been the problem for a while. They had a stay of reprieve with Erol Bulut last season because he did deliver a good season last season, one of Cardiff's best seasons for a long time, probably since Neil Harris guided them to the playoffs a long time ago now. And since then the appointments have been pretty substandard. Lamouchi had a fairly positive spell, but for me, I think they need a manager who's going to play a blended style, who's going to want to be a little bit more sort of productive with the ball. They're going to want to pass it out, but it's not going to be the sole reliance, because I don't think this team's good enough to be a possession-based team. They need to mix it up. They've got a lot of physicality amongst their squad, and I think they need to buy into that, and they need a manager who's going to buy into that. So that might rule out quite a few coaches, but did he go for the Tony Mowbray, the Stephen Schumacher? Will he want a job? Did he go for a Gary Rowett, or did they recruit again from overseas? It's really hard to tell with this board.
Yeah, the board over the years have been a bit erratic with their appointments. That's got to be said. I mean, Erol Bulut was a bit of a random one, considering he's never managed in this country before. There was a lot of talk around Cardiff at the time that they were doing this worldwide managerial search to find the next guy to take over the club, and he came in and did an okay job in his first season, and then this worldwide search hasn't worked out in the long term, has it? And then, as you were alluding to, the season before was a bit all over the place. So I don't really know where Cardiff go next. It's always very hard to say what this board is thinking. I mean, one appointment that would make sense to me would be Cardiff fan Nathan Jones down at Charlton. But whether that actually happens or not, I'm not too sure. Whether they go down a completely different route, who really knows? But I'm the same as you. I don't have a lot of faith that Cardiff will get this next appointment right, because even the most biased of Cardiff fans must be able to admit that their board are a bit weird when it comes to these kind of appointments, Justin.
Oh, I think that that's a fairly good, not very articulate, but it's a good way of putting it. They are a bit weird. They're a bit scattergunny, aren't they? I don't think they know what they want. I don't think they know what they need either. They've had managers come in who have been, the archetypical managers, like a Neil Warnock, like a Neil Harris, like a Mick McCarthy, and then they've gone down the young coach route in the Steve Morrison, the Mark Hudson, and then they've gone for that bit of a blend in Erol Bulut, and none of them have really worked out other than Neil Warnock. And
no. They've been going the wrong way for a long time, haven't they, Justin? And that's a lot of that is down to who they've appointed and just the lack of a clear plan. I still don't know what Cardiff's plan is, but if they did have one, then it's not very evident.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. This is why it's so hard to predict where they go next, because I don't particularly like how the club is run. I think that's very obvious. And I don't think a manager is going to come in like a Stephen Schumacher, who's a head coach, who needs a solid, upstairs, like he had at Plymouth, sort of like he had at Stoke-ish, to really thrive, that head coach type manager. So that sort of rules out a lot of young coaches, I think. Whereas someone like Nathan Jones, like Tony Mowbray, like a Guy Rowett, who is very good at being a manager and a head coach, and he's very experienced and know how to deal with the board and know how to get the best out of players, that might be the route that they probably need to go down. But again, this Cardiff board is so hard to predict; it's impossible.
It really is. A good result for Leeds, though. A relatively simple one, really, but there have been a few Leeds fans calling for Daniel Farke to go recently. I don't think he was ever in danger of that actually happening, but this victory helps. Could they have done it a bit more convincingly? Yeah, I suppose they could have, but a win's a win, isn't it? And I'm sure Daniel Farke will be very happy with what they got. Let's go to the derby. That's apparently not a derby. It's the Teeswear derby. Sunderland beat Middlesbrough 1-0. 3-word reviews here from Sunderland fans. SAFC Yorkshire says non-derby victory. Super Bright says back heel baller. John says remember the name. Marcus says better than Perlo. For Middlesbrough, Borough Memories says devoid of ideas. The goal came from a beautiful back heel by none other than 17-year-old Chris Rigg. And it was sumptuous, wasn't it, Peachy?
It was really impressive composure. Really, really impressive composure. Yes, you're going to get your sceptics and cynics go, oh, it was an open goal. I'm aware it was an open goal, but a lot of experienced players will stop, turn and make an absolute mess of that, whereas Chris Rigg just back-heeled it. He had the awareness and composure and the execution to pull off a very nice-looking goal in a derby. Sorry, in a game between Sunderland and Middlesbrough, not a derby.
A rivalry is what I've seen some people saying it actually is, but, you know.
It is what it is. But, yeah, you've got a teenager doing that in a game of this magnitude. It's just so impressive. You can't speak highly enough of it.
Yeah, the audacity and composure for a 17-year-old to not only do the back heel, but also take it around the goalkeeper like he did is just astonishing. And it's not the first time I've used that word around Chris Rigg in his short career so far. He is just astonishing. He is constantly finding new ways to amaze. And, you know, when it's a young player like him, someone as young as him, it's a big compliment to say, well, he doesn't look out of place considering he's coming up against, you know, fully grown professional athletes. But with him, it's even going beyond that now, where he's actually becoming one of Sunderland's most influential players at 17. Yeah. It's ridiculous, Justin. He's an unbelievable talent.
I just knew we were going to get an outpouring of love from you on this, and on this occasion, it's hard to disagree, and it's hard to not get pulled up in the hype, because just taking this game in isolation, we've got a player who's playing in a derby that isn't a derby in front of 40,000 in the second tier of English football, dominating a midfield. He's a teenager. He's a child. He's only just been legally allowed to start driving or learning how to drive. Yeah. To then put him in a position where you've got you need a lot of maturity. You need a lot of steeliness, and he's playing with composure. He's playing with confidence, and he's, as I say, dominating a midfield. Wow, just wow. That's all you got. That's all you got to say.
And he's only just turned 17, by the way. He must have only just finished his GCSEs last year, which is crazy. He turned 17 in the summer, and it's just crazy that we've got him playing as well as he is, and playing as often as he is, for that matter. We're just getting more and more evidence that he's one of the best young talents we've ever seen at championship level, because you don't get many players lighting up the championship like him before the age of 18. Yeah. And the ones that do very often go on to big things. Don't they? So I'm just so excited by Chris Rigg, I've got to say. But this was a great way for Sunderland to bounce back after their first loss of the season against Plymouth last week. They've won 5 from 6 so far. So certainly a fantastic start to the season for Sunderland. And you know how the Jamaican national team are called the Reggae Boys, Justin?
Yeah. Where are you going with this?
How about this? The Reggie Boys. They're back on track.
God. Okay, yeah. Fair play. It was a good mixed win here. I don't. What I mean by mixed is we saw a lot of elements of what Sunderland had to really get out of themselves to win this. It was a hard fought win, I think, is what I'm trying to say. It was gritty in places. They had to defend. They had to pick their moments. There was a lack of quality at times, as we predicted in the preview episode, because all derbies that aren't derbies fall away like this or play out like this, but they had their moment of quality and decisiveness, whereas Borough didn't, and that was the key thing in this game. Is Sunderland took their opportunity when they had it, and Middlesbrough didn't. I thought in wide areas they were brilliant. Patrick Roberts and Romain Munda were fantastic, but I think the defence deserves the plaudits in this game because they were very, very impressive. Chris Mepham and Luke O'Nien, fantastic at the back.
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed that someone started a petition to change the name of the Wearmouth Bridge in Sunderland to Regis Le Bridge. So it's just good stuff. It's really, really good stuff. But yeah, this was a great win. There's no denying that. Were Sunderland, put it this way, Sunderland in the first 4 games have been like clearly the better team in each of those 4 games. Was that the case here? No, maybe not. But you've got a win against a very good Middlesbrough side. And Middlesbrough are a very good side, despite what their results say. I fully expect them to be challenging for the top 6 this season. And so 3 points against them is big. And it's another clean sheet as well. We're 6 games in and Sunderland have only conceded 1 goal from open play so far, which was scored by an opposition player. And Middlesbrough did have chances. If they could finish, this may have been a very different result. But from a Sunderland perspective, you didn't want a hangover after that Plymouth defeat. And they didn't. They've got Watford and Derby coming up next as well. So there's every chance this unbelievable start continues, Justin. And we're getting to that stage now where we're not just in the start of the season zone anymore, Justin. We're getting towards, the actual meat of the season. And I suppose a question's got to be asked of, is this Sunderland team title challengers? Are they legit title challengers this season? What do you think?
I think if I go back to last season, I can't remember how many games it took for Preston to drop off. But Preston had a really good start to the season before going on a ridiculously poor run of form. I'm not saying that's going to be the case with Sunderland because the stats didn't support Preston's start last season. They were outperforming themselves, whereas Sunderland aren't. I'm hesitant to call them title challengers just yet, but they are laying some really, really positive and strong foundations for themselves. They are very impressive in attack. They create chances. There's a lot of unpredictability about them going forwards, which is what you need. And defensively, they are so resolute and strong, and they control games without the ball, which again is super, super positive. And if I hark back to the Tony Mowbray season where he got them into the playoffs, he found a similar blend, and I think we're seeing a similar blend here, albeit with a lot of more defensive solidity in this side. So I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and say they're title challengers, but if they maintain this form over the next few weeks, I would be very confident to start calling them that. Yeah,
I think as things stand, you've got to be just getting on board the train because this has just been. It's just been so fantastic. Whether they're legitimately title challengers, only time will tell. But when you look at, the thing that always stood out for me, and I've said this a few times now this season, is that when I saw a load of people predicting Sunderland to be finishing mid-table bottom half, I always thought that was a bit surprising because I thought their squad was much better than that. So it's no surprise that they're near the top end of the table, but whether they actually pull off this and go up automatically or even win the title, I don't think you can rule it out because the squad's legitimately good enough, isn't it, Justin? You were talking about Preston just then. We always kind of thought Preston would drop off because, let's be honest, their squad isn't that strong. But with Sunderland, they've definitely got the talent amongst them, haven't they? We've seen them before, that they've just got so much talent all over the park. So all it needed was a fresh set of eyes, I suppose, and Regis Le Bridge has certainly turned out to be that fresh pair of eyes so far, and it's thoroughly exciting watching this Sunderland team, and yeah, hopefully it continues and we do see them develop into a legitimate automatic promotion contender. I don't think you can rule it out, Justin. I think that's the ultimate bottom line you can say about Sunderland so far. Unfortunately, it was a case of the same old story with Middlesbrough. Want it, play well, create some good chances, failed to put them away. Borough had just 1 shot on target in this game, which is insane because they actually played all right, Justin.
Yeah, they did. Do you ever get overwhelmed when picking ice cream flavours?
When I'm at a ice cream van, is that what you mean?
Do you know when you're on holiday and you're greeted by that?
Yeah, If you like on the beaches of Sicily and you've got an ice cream parlour, then you're like, oh God, there's just so much to choose from here. But you know it's going to be one of the best ice creams of your life, so you need to make it count. Okay, exactly. I see what you mean. What's the question?
Well, that was the question. But what I'm trying to get at is you're confronted by so much choice that, simply picking the wrong flavour and subsequently you're left with something you didn't want. And I feel like Middlesbrough are like that in the final third. They are getting in some really good chances, in really good areas, having some really good chances, but there's such a huge indecisiveness about them. Huge indecisiveness, and it's frustrating the hell out of me, as it should be everybody, because you see the potential of this Borough side and how well they recruited in the summer. But I feel that Michael Carrick's being let down by some really poor decision making from the players. And as I say, when you've got so much attacking quality in that final third, and each time the ball's falling to the wrong individuals, you can only be very, very annoyed. You mentioned one shot on target. Middlesbrough had 25 touches inside the Sunderland box, which was 10 more than Sunderland managed. And they missed 2 big chances. That has to change. The players have to step up.
Yeah, they do. They do. I'm not sure I totally agree with you, whether it's down to making the wrong decisions or what have you. It's just about putting the fucker in the back of the net, really. It's literally that simple. I know you hate this phrase, Justin, but Middlesbrough really are in a false position. For them to be sat 12 is pretty bamboozling, because they have been the better side in pretty much every game this season. And I wouldn't disagree with anyone who said to me they were the better side against Sunderland either, because I think you could definitely argue that. They just cannot put chances away. It's frustrating sitting here as a neutral talking about it. And I can only imagine how it feels for Michael Carrick when it comes to frustrating when he's the bloody manager. Because you can make the excuse that the chances haven't fallen to the right players, but Borough's 2 best chances against Sunderland fell to Tommy Conway and Emmanuel Latelath, who you would want them to fall to, and they just didn't take them. So it is a concern. I do think Borough will come good, because if they play like they have been for the remainder of the season, they'll definitely finish in the top 6. Sometimes these things just click out of nowhere, but it has to happen sooner rather than later for them, because this can't keep happening, Justin.
No, it can't. And as I say, like, they're being left with ice cream flavours they do not want, because I think they're being too indecisive. But these slow starts, it's down to, because I don't think it was a heavy summer. I think they added to the quality, so you can't really put the finger on players blending together and gelling together. I think it's just down to poor decision making, bad thought process in front of goal, and ultimately they're left with not as many points as they probably should have. But the age old expression in football is you don't put your chances away. You don't win your games, and Middlesbrough are falling victim to that. This season and last season.
West Brom stay top of the league after making it 5 wins from 6 by beating Plymouth 1-0. Who got the goal? Let's see if you can guess from the 3-word reviews. Rob says Josh Maja Party. Jacob says Josh fucking Maja. Yeah, it was that man again. What a ridiculous start to the season he is having, Justin. Before this season, Josh Maja had scored 5 goals in 42 games over his last 3 seasons in English football. Now he's scored 6 in 6, Peachy. Crazy.
The Championship Pippo Inzaghi. Come on. There is not a player in world football at the moment that is mimicking Pippo Inzaghi's, former AC Milan and Italy striker Pippo Inzaghi's arc right now. Maja is your classic goal hanger, and I mean that in the most sort of tender, nice way possible. Because again, he's in the 6-yard box every time. Most impressive. He's just in the right position every time, and that's inside the 6-yard box. And he's taking shots very often with both of his feet, and he's getting on the end of crosses. He's getting on the end of headers. It's a mix of good coaching and a good player fulfilling very early potential and a very clinical mindset. You can't take anything away from Josh Maja. He's been brilliant.
He absolutely has. It's been a crazy start, and let's be honest, it's come completely out of nowhere. Because at the start of the season, I was a bit worried about West Brom after they sold Brandon Thomas Asante. I mean, I've always had mixed views on Thomas Asante, but it seemed to leave them short up front, and then this happens. And Maja could have had a hat-trick, actually, in this game against Plymouth. However, he's continuing to get in the right positions, and he's scoring goals for fun. And that's the main thing, isn't it? I know we bang on about this a lot, but it bears repeating about the ability Carlos Corberán has to get players' careers back on track. And there's plenty of examples of him doing that at West Brom. Could go through, Mowat, Diangana, etc. But Josh Maja might be his best example yet. The main question is, will he keep this up all season? I don't know whether he will or not, but I don't see any reason why not, based off these first 6 games. Because he keeps getting in those right positions, and if you keep doing that, then he will score a lot of goals. I checked earlier, and I think he's got by far the highest XG for an individual player in the division this season. Well, yeah, I suppose you're correct, Justin. But what I will say is anyone who claims to have backed him to be top goal scorer at the start of the season is lying, because even though we've had, the likes of Chuba Akpom and Sammy Schmodics win a surprise golden boot in recent years, this one has really come out of the blue, it's got to be said. But fair play to Josh Maja, and well done to West Brom on another big win. They're still top of the league. What do you think of Plymouth, Justin, after this game?
Much better, much better. Plymouth fans might be surprised at this praise, but they were a lot better in this game. I mean, West Brom is a very hard place to go. The Hawthorns is a very difficult place to go and get a result. Highlighted that with the numbers in the preview episode. And West Brom did have a fair few chances in this game, but going forwards, I think Plymouth offered a lot more. I think the 4-3-3 they've changed to is unlocking a lot more in that squad. There's a lot more balance as well. I think away points will be hard to come by based on both Wayne Rooney's record and Plymouth's record. But if they put performances in like this, they will more often not get results away from home. It's about being difficult to beat, difficult to break down, which they were. They were better. There's still a lot of room for growth, but this was a much better performance than the one we've seen, and the one we've passed judgment on, I'll say.
I wouldn't say much better. I'd say better. I think much is a strong word.
In terms of their away performances, if we ignore the Sunderland performance last weekend and focus purely on their away performances, this was a much needed improvement in their away setup, in how they played and how they got going forwards as well, and how confident they were, or how much more confident they looked, I should say. So yes, it's not groundbreaking, but they looked a lot more competitive than what I've seen.
Yeah, okay, I kind of see what you mean, because they were better, but at the same time, they still could have very easily lost this game 4-0, maybe even more. As I say, Josh Maja should have scored a hat-trick in this game, and West Brom did hit the post 3 times in the first half. So if this is much better from Plymouth, then flipping heck, how bad were they before?
Well, you said it.
Exactly. So, it's quite funny listening to the West Brom in-house commentary team, who were losing their minds at how their team weren't ahead in the first half. And as I say, if that's Plymouth being better, then they've been pretty shocking, haven't they? Despite the win last week against Sunderland, not much has changed in my mind with Plymouth, if I'm being completely honest. They've been very below average so far, and they were rather lucky in that win against Sunderland. And if they didn't get that, they'd be sat in the bottom 3 right now. And I know Plymouth fans will think we're picking on them, but we'd be lying, Justin, if we were sat here right now and said anything different than what we've said so far this season, wouldn't we? So, yeah, it's better from Plymouth, but there's still a long way to go before we see any sort of signs that they're going to stay up or easily stay up. Got to be said, their next 2 games are against Luton and Burnley as well, so it's difficult to see things improving in the short term. So something else to keep in mind there from a Plymouth perspective. It's now time for us to check out how our second-tier bet builder and multiple with SBK got on, which included our game of the week, as well as Justin and I's 2 bankers from Friday. So our bet builder from Friday's show was Sunderland v Middlesbrough, and a £5 stake on that was due to return £130. We had half-time result to be a draw, which wasn't a winner, unfortunately. Luke Ayling to be carded. That didn't come in either, despite him and Romain Mundell having quite the battle down Sunderland's left-hand side. We had on the 3.5 goals, which of course did come in, and then Sunderland to win, which also came in. So another 2 out of 4 for us, unfortunately, on our bet builders. However, our second tier multiple, a £10 stake on that was due to return £56. We had Sunderland to win, Leeds to win, and West Brom to win. So we've got a winner, ladies and gents. Finally, it's been a long time coming, and we've been so close on so many occasions this season, but we're off the mark, Justin. Get in.
Championship experts, full stop. That's the headline here. That's all you need to know. We did it. We finally did it. Did we get any last season? I can't remember. I don't think we did.
No, last season it was a shorter period than we weren't doing the all season long, weren't we? But this season we're off the mark. That's the main thing. I'm all about the recency bias.
More wins than Cardiff.
Yes. And that's the worst thing for Erol Bulut. That's the biggest indictment for him. Anyway, we'll be back with our next round of picks in this coming Friday's preview show with SBK. Let's see if we can make it 2 out of 2, shall we, Justin? Let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about Narcis Pelach's first game in charge of Stoke and a Preston player taking a little nibble out of a Blackburn player. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Now, it didn't exactly go to plan for Narcis Pelach in his first game in charge of Stoke. They lost 3-1 at home to Hull to give Tim Volter his first win as Tigers boss. 3-word reviews for Hull fans. Richard says win at last. Paul says Volter ball in action. Simeon on our Patreon says mauled by Tigers. Stoke were ahead on the hour mark, but then pretty much capitulated after giving away the penalty, which led to Hull equalising. And what a capitulation it turned out to be, Justin.
Massive. Would it be fair to say that Stoke were in control for that first hour?
I thought they were. First off, I thought Stoke were much the better team.
Yeah, they were. A really positive start for Pelach, to be honest with you. I was quite impressed. I wasn't blown away, but as I came away thinking, okay, this is a much better performance than what I expected in such a short space of time. And then and it all kicked off, not in that way, but just it all unfolded very, very quickly. And Hull, like a tiger would, I don't know if tigers smell blood. They're not sharks.
I don't know. I don't know how hunting works in tigers.
No. Well, in this case, let's say they smelt blood, and they went for the kill, and they really did maul Stoke, because I just think they turned it on and switched it on, and Stoke couldn't get to grips at all, and that's something that Pelach is going to have to work with, because it really was a capitulation. The disorganisation defensively was quite tragic at times. The space in which Hull were exploiting was really alarming. So there's almost the best and worst of what you can expect from Stoke under Pelach, potentially.
Yeah, I did notice Millian Manhoff had a couple of great chances, and which happened before half time, which could have really killed off the game from a Stoke perspective.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, then we wouldn't have to worry about the capitulation in the second half. From a really clumsy penalty as well to give away, and then the mistake for the final goal by Victor Johansson really summed up Stoke's evening. So not a great first game, and it really gave Narcis Pelach a good idea of what he's up against at Stoke, because there's plenty he's got on his hands, isn't there, Justin?
There is. I think the most disappointing thing is you'll play like Ben Gibson, who was I think almost at fault for a couple of the goals in which he was he's slow to turn around, he's slow to react, and I think that's partly down to the recruitment, if you like. But I just think mentality wise, it just folded. You can't give your opposition that much space, especially if you don't respond. It was just an equaliser. Stoke were very much in their game, and then a couple of changes from Tim Volter, so kudos to him, and a couple of subs, and it just turned around so quickly. You need a little bit more calmness, a little bit more, not clinical, but composure on the pitch, and that's maybe, as you say, I wouldn't blame it on Pelach's inexperience, because it's only one game in isolation, but maybe a tweak would have helped that a little bit. But there's just. Yeah, how quickly they dropped off that last 30 minutes was the big alarm.
Yeah, I do feel like this is part of a Stoke problem, though, where there's just an issue with the mindset of the club, because things like them having the right manager, the right players, and nothing progressing in the past 6 seasons is a sign that things just aren't all right behind the scenes. So that's one of the things that Pelach will have to deal with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't be too downhearted if I was a Stoke fan, because Pelach has literally had 2 days to work with his new team before this game. So it's not ideal preparation, but he's undoubtedly got a job on his hands, and I think and hope he's fully aware of that. Because this club's not gone anywhere in the time that they've been in the Championship, have they? They've been stuck in lower mid-table obscurity for a while now, and it's going to take a mighty effort to turn that around, and then completely crumbling on Friday. That's not an unusual trait with Stoke in recent years. So Pelach has got his hands full, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I do think there is certainly stuff to work with at Stoke, even though I was slightly sceptical about Stoke at the start of the season. I will admit that you've got the likes of Bae Jun Ho and Wouter Berger, for example, two really, really talented players who have been attracting some of Europe's biggest clubs. There's talent there. I mean, Walter Berger, though, he's someone who's had a really poor season so far, even though we are only 6 games in. So that's what Pelach has got to work with. He's got to turn that around. If not, then he'll just become the latest in a long line of Stoke managers who do all right for a bit and then completely falter and their career just goes off a cliff. It's worth saying that reports from today say Stoke were actually planning to get rid of Steven Schumacher before the end of last season, Justin. They held talks with 2 managers about taking over from him, but they turned down the job and it meant Schumacher held on. I don't know if you have any feelings about that, Justin?
It disappoints me a little bit. It is football. It is what happens. But if you're adamant that Steven Schumacher wasn't the man, it is such a footballing faux pas upstairs to allow him a recruitment window and the summer to work with those players. You give the next man who comes in, i.e. Pelach, you need to give him a head start, and you haven't. He's running from behind essentially, which is problematic. So I think if you don't believe that Schumacher is the man, change it and find someone else. Doesn't matter if you've been turned down by 2 managers. That probably speaks to problems within the club as opposed to the club itself.
I think the only thing I'd say on that is maybe Schumacher kind of saved himself by having a bit of an upturn in form towards the end of last season with Stoke, and that maybe was the reason why he held on for his job over the summer. But if John Walters wasn't convinced with him, as it seems like he wasn't, then why you won't pull the trigger earlier, no matter how Stoke ended the last season? I don't really know. So it's a bit of a strange situation, but we'll see how Pelach gets on. The final bit of business we have to sort out, Justin, regarding Stoke is what we were discussing on Friday, our £50 bet at the start of the season. So I said that Stoke wouldn't finish above 14th. You thought they would. Then after the Pelach appointment, you weren't feeling too optimistic, while I was. So I offered you the chance to swap it around. You said you would give us an answer today. So what's the verdict, Justin?
I did, didn't I? I have also written my notes. Let's check in at the next international break, but I don't think you're going to allow me a little bit of extra time. So I'm going to stick with the bet because okay. I'm not going to run away with it. The first 60 minutes, I think, is a good indicator of where Stoke can go under Pelach. The final 30 minutes of where it is another indicator of where Stoke could go under Pelach. But I would rather hedge my bets and go with that first 60 minutes rather than the final 30 minutes.
Okay, well, there you go, ladies and gents. Justin Peach sticking to his guns, even though he's not a massive fan of the Pelach appointment, but we'll see how that goes as the season progresses. We should mention Hull, Justin, Tim Walter's first win as manager. Boy, did he need that, did he? Yeah,
he really did. I think, firstly, completely unrelated to football, the khaki green that Hull have in their training kit is bloody gorgeous. Great,
that's very nice.
Great use of the colour there, which is not what Hull fans want us to speak about, considering they just won their first game. But aside from that, I was really impressed with the final 30 minutes. I think introducing Regan Slater really did change the game in Hull's favour. Liam Miller was electric in that final 30 minutes as well, and again a good idea of what Tim Walter Ball could look like. I know Stoke made it very easy for them, but I think in which the way that Hull exploited the space that Stoke were leaving was so clinical, so chosen. I think I was really encouraged by it. But again, not going to get too carried away because for the first 60 minutes they were quite poor.
Yeah. I mean, if the capitulation from Stoke didn't happen, then Tim Walter wouldn't have been too far away from his position being untenable. And, that is despite him only being a few games in. And it's got to be said, we did see a few occasions where Hull looked very vulnerable after losing the ball. It wasn't too different, actually, from the Sheffield United game last week. But the big difference is Sheffield United have players capable of punishing you for being open, whereas Stoke, as we saw here, didn't. But it's a big win for Walter, and he'll be hoping they can build from there. Is worth saying they've got Cardiff at home next. So it's a great chance to make it back-to-back wins, but we shall see with Tim Walter. Liam Manning got the last laugh in the Manning derby as Bristol City beat his old side Oxford 2-1. 3-word reviews from Bristol City fans. Zane says Liam Manning masterclass. Sam says Manning owns Oxford. I understand there were a few snake inflatables at this game, Oxford fans. Still not keen on Liam Manning for ditching them a year ago. But it's a big win for him onto it because he was also under a bit of pressure after back-to-back 3-0 losses, Justin, so he needed this.
Yeah, he really did, and I think the way they won as well, the way they tactically set up, I think was, I wouldn't say a nice change, but a much needed change, if you like. The use of Jason Knight in the number 10 probably doesn't get the best of Jason Knight in possession, but out of possession gives him a lot of fire, doesn't it? Because he runs all day, so that press was quite impressive at times. But the win itself was as you say, much needed. I wasn't suggesting that Liam Manning was ever close to the sack, but back-to-back 3-0 defeats does build a lot of pressure on a manager. So for him to go to his former club and or play against his former club and get the win, which it was much needed. And again, the manner in which they won as well, which it was another impressive facet. And Sinclair Armstrong getting a goal again. A lot of positives to take away from it. A lot of positives, a lot of good performances from individuals.
Yeah. It could have been a miserable afternoon for
exactly.
Liam Manning if Mark Harris didn't miss an absolute sitter. That, got to be said, that sitter had a higher XG than Ibra Adams' miss for Derby last week. So that gives you an idea of just how bad that miss was if you haven't seen it. But that happened when the score was 1-0. So Oxford could have killed off the game from that point, and that would have been a pretty miserable afternoon, as I say. But Bristol City were really good. Scott Twine and Jason Knight were excellent. Yu Hirakara, who's Bristol City's new Japanese midfielder, has been getting rave reviews from supporters. So hopefully this is a turning point for Bristol City. I was never too worried about Liam Manning losing his job, but things could have turned if they didn't pick up this win. So this was needed, and he'll be very chuffed, particularly if it comes at the expense of his former employers. Just quickly on Oxford, Justin, did you see Mark Harris didn't win goal of the month for August for that goal against Blackburn? I'm astonished by that.
I'm not taking anything away from Andy Vyman's goal, but the Mark Harris one was special. It really was. And I think maybe the magnitude of the game probably played in Vyman's favour a little bit, but that Mark Harris goal was so spectacular, so beautiful. It's just a damn travesty he didn't win goal of the month. But look, second tier awards are what it was what everyone pays their money for. If we're going to dish out a goal of the month award, it's to Mark Harris, and that's what he really wants. That's what football wants.
There you go. We're not giving out Goal of the Month awards, but on this occasion we will do.
We'll forget to do it next month.
Just despite the official awards. Yeah. Andy Vyman's goal was fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from that, but I just cannot believe Mark Harris has been overlooked for that goal, because it was astonishing. Swansea have won back-to-back games after they won 2-1 away at Coventry. 3-word review here for Swansea. Tim says, super Luke Williams. Got to be said, this game was temporarily stopped because of an incredible downpour of rain. It was absolutely chucking it down. So I don't know if that had any effect on the game itself, but it was really coming down at one stage. And this caught me by surprise, Justin. Swansea have snuck up to 7th in the table.
It's almost like, well, how have they got there? I don't think we've seen a sort of prime Luke Williams ball, if you like, but they've been correcting a lot of, I wouldn't say problems that they've had, but a lot of problems that we typically see with Luke Williams ball, i.e. they can be too open sometimes. They can be a little bit too easy to play through. But, generally they looks like they're eradicating those habits that have been built up, and they're chipping away at results, which is a great place to be. They look harder to beat. They look harder to break down compared to last season, which, as I say, is a very, very gives you a lot of confidence of what they can do this season. As I say, you're harder to break down and difficult to score against. It's a nice habit to have.
Yeah, I really like this Swansea team. They've got some really exciting players, and it wouldn't surprise me if they do better than what people think. I do agree with you. I haven't come away from a Swansea game yet thinking, God, they've looked really, really good. And I think a perfect example of that is this win away at Coventry, where Lawrence Figueroa was probably their man of the match. He was a very busy boy in the Swansea goal. But there's a good foundation at Swansea for them to do pretty well this season. I suppose one disappointment is that they could be sat in the top 6 right now if they killed off the one game that they would have really liked to win against Cardiff. But, 7th after 6 games of the season, while your big rivals are bottom of the table without a manager, it's a pretty good going from a Swansea perspective, isn't it? So, yeah, could be better in terms of performances, but won't criticise them too much, because 7th is really, really good for them. Not the same can't be said about Coventry City, unfortunately. Justin, our fears are pretty much been confirmed with them now, haven't they? They are definitely having another slow start. It's 1 win from 6, and this will be the 3rd season in a row that it's happened, Justin.
Did we predict them to finish top 2?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Anyway, quickly moving on.
I mean, considering we know how Coventry suddenly turn it on halfway through the season, I don't think that can be ruled out because they do turn into basically Barcelona in the second half of the season. But yeah, the slow starts really don't help things, do they?
It isn't, and we're not seeing a team running away with it. So top 2 might still be on the cards. But I think what we're seeing a little bit, I was just alluding to it with Swansea, is the midfield's far too easy to play through. I'm not going to mention Ben Sheaf because I think the players have got to step up that they've got in there. But I think I'll probably divert attention to potentially whether or not losing a lot of leadership in the squad over the past sort of 6-7 months, i.e. Matty Godden, Carl McFadzean and Liam Kelly all leaving, along with the senior coaches in Adi Vivesh and Dennis Lawrence, mean that transition time might be a little bit slower than expected. I think that's probably the only thing I can point the finger at, because Mark Robbins is a good coach. They've got a good squad, but they've lost a lot of older heads, both in the playing squad and the coaching staff, which might be impacting things.
I think you say that's the only thing just now. I think you've got to be mentioning Ben Sheaf because that's a pretty obvious absence. They've desperately missed him. And I mean, he's been injured so far this season, not played in every game. But I do agree with you at the same time that Coventry have so much talent in this team and it shouldn't all capitulate based on the availability of one player. And Coventry fans must be so frustrated because last season they may have got a top 6 place if it wasn't for the slow start, and the season before they wouldn't have been too far off the top 2 if it wasn't for the slow start. So the question is, how much could it cost them this time around? I will point out Coventry have been playing pretty well actually, but this is far from ideal. A rather concerning stat is that they've only won 6 points from an available 36 across their last 12 championship games, when you include last season as well. So it's not going great. And yes, they probably will do what they usually do and pick up around winter time, but they shouldn't be happening in the first place. That's the bottom line here. And it's cost them before, and it may very well cost them. Well, I don't know what it will cost them, but it may cost them something come the end of the season. That's not great. Norwich got just their second win of the season after beating Watford 4-1. 3 reviews here for Norwich. Aaron on our Patreon says the Hoff is cooking. Ben says Hoffball is beautiful. Canary Forever says I love Hoffball. I think they were impressed in this game. It's Norwich's first home win in the league since the start of April. And what a way to get it, because Norwich looked very, very impressive here, Justin.
Talk about going from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
They've looked very, very average, and then all of a sudden they look like a team who could be competing for the top 2. It was quite an incredible turnaround. But as you say, Norwich were very impressive. I literally wrote my notes here. There was not a shit goal scored in this game as well. There was a bit of art to each of the goal, and I think the most impressive thing here of Norwich is they created a ton of good chances. The Callum Doyle goal was spectacular, and I just feel that they mixed the game up nicely. They mixed the game up really well. There was a directness to them. They exploited the wide areas time and time again. They exploited space in behind. You only got to look at the Kenny McLean pass for the Boys Signs goal, which was extremely good. That long ball in behind that Watford defence. It was brilliant. Gabriel Sara, who? That's all you need to ask.
Yeah, Gabriel Sara, who doesn't really work because you're saying it should be Gabriel who, shouldn't it? Really, because Gabriel Sara, who doesn't really make sense. Do you see what I mean?
Stop picking faults. Just I was praising this team, and then you turn it around and try and lace.
No, because the point of Gabriel Sarahu is saying, like, what's his second name? It doesn't really make sense.
Sarahu.
Gabriel Sarahu. Yeah.
Sarahu.
Okay, fine. But the bottom line here is Norwich were sensational. The football on show was mouth-watering, and the scoreline didn't flatter Norwich at all. They were tremendous. And you're right, they were having a slow start to the season. So this was a sort of back on track with a bang kind of performance. Boya Sainz was sensational on the left wing. Marcelino Nunes, Kenny McLean in midfield were excellent. Callum Doyle, Justin, you mentioned his goal, which was very, very good, but he was the standout in this game. Usually a centre-back, asked to play at left-back here. And that signing by Norwich is looking better and better as the weeks go by because he is some player. And we did say not long ago that Norwich could be a slow burner this season because of the amount of business they did pretty late on in the window. You know, a lot of players, some of whom have come from abroad, they'll need time to gel. So I think they'll get stronger as the season goes on. But if games like this are a sign of what's to come in the next few weeks, then that's very, very exciting, isn't it? So, yeah, Norwich all of a sudden one to keep an eye on after this very, very good win. Quickly on Watford, Justin, could their start have been a false storm, do you think? They've picked up 1 point from the last 3 games now.
I think it's maybe harsh. I think it's probably born out of an overachievement with the results they had early, right before the international break. The squad is low on quality, so sustaining their start was always going to be difficult. And I think in this game in isolation, I saw a lot of Watford fans saying that the team just didn't show up, and I think you can say that at times. Yeah, I think it probably was a mix here of Norwich being very, very good, but also Watford just being really, really poor and not doing the basics they needed to do to come and get a result. So, was it a false dawn? I guess yes, it was, but I think they probably overachieved anyway, and perhaps we're seeing a bit of a balancing out now.
Yeah. So you don't think it is harsh. You just think they just had a very good start, is what you're trying to say, Justin. I think you're probably right. It's, the thing is with Watford, yes, they did have a very good start, but the things that we were raising concerns about over the summer, like the lack of investment in the team, the players who had left, the inexperienced manager, these are still problems, aren't they? These problems haven't gone away. And that will be the concern with Watford. And with the recent results, I don't think they've been terrible. I think they actually did okay against Norwich, despite losing 4-1. I think Norwich were just absolutely class. So whether we're going to see a massive downturn or not, I'm not too sure. But you have got to be looking at the 1 point from 3 games and wondering, are we entering into a bad patch now for Watford, which we haven't really seen yet under Tom Cleverley. So we'll see. But I think it was without a doubt that Watford were always going to have some sort of a downturn after that good start to the season, weren't they? And finally, this Sunday lunchtime, we had a Lancashire derby between Preston and Blackburn. It ended goalless, but was great entertainment if you like watching 22 men kick each other or biting each other in some circumstances, Justin, because Preston's Militon Osmajic seemed to take a bite out of Blackburn's Owen Beck. And Beck was the one that got sent off for it.
There's an air of seriousness to this, isn't there? But we'll get onto that in a moment. You have a younger sibling, but I don't think you ever had, you ever play fighting to the extent where you just bite them. Because I did
at some point.
Yeah, I did. I'm the youngest of four siblings, and I definitely use my teeth. So maybe there was that natural instinct from Osmajic to just be like, the only way to diffuse this is to bite somebody.
Maybe. I was thinking it was a classy tribute to Luis Suarez after he recently announced his retirement from international football. But it was just such a bizarre thing because
it's weird. They were adults.
Because the replays didn't really pick it up initially, and then you had Owen Beck shouting in the linesman's face, "He's bit me! He's bit me!" and then pointing at his back. I mean, the back of the neck is a bizarre place to bite someone anyway. Not that I've really thought much about where is a good place to bite someone, but just a bizarre incident, Justin. And I imagine he'll probably get punished in
hope so.
in hindsight for it.
I don't know. I don't even know how to assess it. When in football, on a podcast, would anyone have to, other than Luis Suarez situations, would anyone have to give feedback and commentary on a situation where an adult's bit another adult?
Yeah.
They're fucking adults.
It's a very strange thing to do, isn't it? Imagine getting so wound up that you bite someone.
It's embarrassing as well. It's really embarrassing. It's really, really embarrassing.
And he hasn't really got a leg to stand on either, because it's quite clear that he's done it, because you can see his teeth baring in one of the replays afterwards, and his shirts, and Owen Beck's shirt in his mouth. But it's a very bizarre incident, and just pretty much summed up what was a really bad-tempered game. Sam Greenwood was also sent off early on in this one, and there wasn't a shot for the first 33 minutes of this game, so it wasn't great in terms of quality, but as I say, loads and loads of kicking and just bad-temperedness, which you kind of expect in a derby. And I don't really have anything else to say on this game, Justin.
You kind of expect a bad-temperedness in a derby. You do not expect another human being to bite another human being over the age of 4 years old.
Yeah, probably.
That's your big takeaway.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do the polls, ladies and gents. This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter that we want to get their thoughts on. So the first question we asked was this. Oh, this is an interesting one, Justin. We were discussing it earlier, but are Sunderland title contenders this season? I'll say it's interesting because I've seen the results. Earlier, you were saying no for now.
Yeah, I don't think you can really pick a title contender after 5, 6 games, 7 games, whatever it's been. So I'm going to say no for now. But there'll be a lot of fans.
Change.
Yeah, a lot of fans will tell me, but they're top of the league, so they have to be. Oh, yeah, we're 6 games in, man. Calm down.
The second in the league. 50% of people said yes, 50% said no. So there you go. It's a tight one. It's a tight one, ladies and gents. We'll see how that changes as the season goes on. What was the better goal? Mark Harris v Blackburn, Andy Vyman v Burnley.
Mark Harris.
I think it's Mark Harris as well, but 47% of people said Mark Harris, 53% said Andy Vyman, Justin. I get the technique on the Vyman goal is sensational, but for me, that Harris goal is just... it's one of those things that you only see once every 5 years.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful goal. And finally, what shape do you cut your toast? Rectangular or triangular?
I go rectangular. I don't think I've had triangular-shaped toast since I was a child.
The only time I ever do triangles is in a toasty, because I feel like it's so nice just having a bite of a nice cheese toasty on one of the ends, one of the pointy ends when you have a toasty. But that's the only time I ever do it, because otherwise I'm just very much a rectangular kind of man. Yeah,
I'd be interested to see who's a triangular kind of chewer of toast here. Eater of toast. It's rectangle all day. Even sandwiches, rectangle all day.
We've had some interesting replies, but 66% of people said rectangles, 34% said triangles. I had a lot of people say they don't even cut their toast. They just eat it without cutting it, which, fair enough if you're in a rush.
I've done it at times.
This is an interesting one. Grim Timshaw says cut in 3 pillars. So it's much better and less likely to get crumbs caught in your beard before work.
Sure. No.
That's what he says. I've never done it myself, but I mean, it's just more work, isn't it? Because then you've got to do 2 cuts.
Yeah. You put your wrist under a lot of pressure there.
Yeah. Not too sure about that, but maybe I'll give it a try sometime since I'm a very bearded man.